And also listening to what the previous speaker said, and just to go further with the expert which is going to conclude our session, we talked about a united value system, talked about by Shona, meaning that in the team they have common goals, common value system, and the aim is the best interests of a child. And that is not always the criminal proceedings. So Bērna, what they gain from that is like, it's a very different kind of assistance and support, psychological, medical, and that's like a success story consisting of several blocks. And that is why I am really glad that we are trying to go this route. It's not easy to connect several fields. Then this also information sharing to non-violent parent, adult, which is a contact person of a child. This is also a field or topic which is discussed too little, and Bērna would like to introduce more awareness about that, because we are also supporting the grown-ups, the adults, but they can't help a child if it's difficult for them themselves. And then again, there are special leaflets for support persons of a child, and you could also ask the employees of Bērna, or upon registration, there are several types of various materials available. And what I'm heading towards is, I'm heading towards the last speaker of today, Laura Pirsko, who is going to talk about the best methods of rehabilitation and accessibility of the support in the regions, and how to strengthen the existing systems, and what we do in Bērna and what specialists do throughout Latvia. So, hello, I am Laura Pirsko, and as well, the last speaker, what are the options for the last speaker? It's whether like I have a lot of time, or you have to like fulfill the program, or it's the other way around, actually, that you can simply manage to say what you can manage to say during the little time devoted to you. I was told I will have a lot of time, but in reality, I have little time. I have, actually 10 minutes. Yes, I have 10 minutes. Okay then, 10 minutes. But I want to separate my speech in two parts. One I absolutely have to talk about, and the second part is what I really wanted to share with you. And so my education is, I am clinical psychologist, you can also see that, and practitioner and therapist, but my encounter with the child abuse began in 2000, and since 2001 in the center Dārdedze, and how it's been, how the practice has evolved, how to interview children with intermediation and the presence of a psychologist, and also by means of some technical tools. All this evolvement occurred, well, me seeing it in front of my eyes. And now I see that we have a year. We have only a year, because in 2025 we have an anniversary. When we can celebrate that for 20 years already, we can interview children in a more appropriate way, in a milder way, and for persons directing the proceedings, we can then gather a more valuable information and use the psychologist as an intermediary, and also use the technical means. And that's great, because we have a year, and these ideas will have had somehow also materials. Then when I look back to 2005, then when in criminal proceedings this possibility finally was open and available, then this call to Dārdedze was like, someone called Dārds and said, "We need a psychologist for criminal proceedings. Do you have a psychologist?" And this was the NGO, and they say, "Yes, we have a psychologist. Of course, please arrive, go to us." Then there's a policeman with a child, and opposite them sits the psychologist. So what do we do? And the psychologist is shrugging their shoulders, not knowing what to do, what exactly they are doing there. And the policeman, also the police officer, doesn't know. "I'm not sure. I have no idea what you need to do." But the criminal proceeding provides for me, well, addressing you. And so since then, we understand that actually the law has provided us with such opportunities to be modern and appropriate for the context of today, of the time. And then since 2005, we see already experience exchange trips, and there are premises with available technologies necessary. They're not only in Riga anymore, but they are also in various other crisis centers. We have trainings for psychologists and policemen, judges, prosecutors. But there has always been a missing link to combine it all together. And that is, and once again, this idea about Bērnahus, of course, it's how it was born or evolved, of course, earlier, but we do have it now, and we see what are all these cooperations, how well they work. And now we have one more year to launch this all at such level that it is just bright, working very smoothly and well. And then next year, at this time, we will be celebrating that during the 20 years we have used what we had been given, and we will be glad for our achievements, and we'll be glad for the achievements of other countries, and we'll share the experience in terms of human resources, in terms of all the research and science behind it, and we will be able to, and we will know how it all has to work. But actually, I didn't have to say it, or it wasn't in my slides, but I had to say about what happens to a child when they've been victim of the sexual abuse.
Yeah.
And so, yes. And I just wanted to accentuate what usually is what we argue most about. And from the perspectives of various specialists and regulatory acts, then at various points throughout, we see that there is a feeling that we might have done it all or completed everything. Now, maybe there is some complete information regarding what we need to do in case of violence, then we have to report. Reporting being this finalized activity, but from the point of view of the specialist who reveals this fact, everything is fine, indeed. But for a child and for their family, this path is only then beginning. And then there are various processes. And then comes time when sooner or later, but the active processes end, and then criminal proceedings continue. There are situations when there's been trial already, and there have been convictions, but the trauma has been experienced. So it as if like continues or exists, and if we know it from psychologists that if the psychologists formulate the sequence, so who are the last ones or second to last, for example, working with this family, following up with these activities, is what we see is what we need to do, looking at the regulatory acts from the social support law. We have to do some kind of mystical aggregative activities for our client to recover with their functionality. And I think that this is a very important definition, because at the essence, nobody says what is it for us to conduct activities for our client to continue their activity. So recovery, it is very important for the recovery to be based on the needs of our client. So we can't just say, okay, we have a basket of services and let us feed the client from this basket. They have to receive everything. We have to constantly be thinking who is the client, what are their needs, and what we need to give to them for them to recover with the ability to function normally. And that is at the core of our service.
Jā. Nu, lūk. Un tad, kur tad to psiholoģisko palīdzību
So then,
var saņemt, kādā veidā
where this psychological support can be received? Of course, there may be a necessity for different kinds of specialists, but I will be talking about the psychological support. We have 4 sources where this support can be received. There is state-provided service, provided by the state. Once again, yes, it is since the end of the 90s in place, and the funding there has been retained through all the crises. It means that every child who has been a victim, not only of sexual abuse, it's 20 consultations now provided, regardless also of their location. But the second option is the services provided by local governments, social services, oftentimes where the psychologists work, and then there is no such limit or framework, and there are local governments actually, meaning that there is a full scale. There are local governments which do not offer that at all, but there are ones which offer and provide everything. There are local governments where local government funds 5 consultations. Then there are local governments which say that if the client arrives, they would provide all that the client needs, or as many as they need. And then the next resource where the psychological support can be provided and rehabilitation is the non-government sector, which is a marvelous sector with their capabilities, with maybe this one drawback is that they are project-oriented, meaning that whenever there's a project or this project is not interested to the municipality, then the funding ends and there is no more support available. And so from the client's perspective, it is difficult, but well, at least for us as specialists, because there are just some separate non-governmental institutions which continue doing this for several years. We're talking about Skalbe, Marta, Dārdedze. So for years, they're providing and realizing it, but that's not the only ones. In Latvia, there are more.
And at the same time, we had a lot of other offers which were there and then they disappeared. Then there's a private sector which offers private practices and a wide spectrum of psychological support services. And it's the widest diversity, starting from both from the financial standpoint, also from the methodology standpoint. There's plenty of this aid, but we cannot be sure where is good or bad or right or wrong. We should look at it in a different way. That also in my practice there were cases where in police they start the investigation, the criminal procedure. There is a report to the social services that there is a requirement for rehabilitation. So far, so good. Social service to parents offers the rehabilitation, and it is included in a state program. The parents say it's okay. We already are cooperating with 2 remaining providers of the aid. And it happens that social service mentions, no, you have, you need, you must, police has addressed us, you have to go there. You certainly has to go to this program. But it's not actually the case that only the one source gives a better service, better support than others. It is only the matter of the financing available. So if the child has started the cooperation with some private specialist or with NGO, it is good that there is established a contact cooperation. Our aim is to support them and not to go try to take it all other way. Next one.
Kaut kā vairāk mums tā runāt par to, kad, jā, par tā, ko ņemt vērā.
I'm more discussing the things that should be considered when we talk about the psychological aid. In our social area, there is a minimal amount of things that is always that one size fits all. And we call those, in a CBT, we call it the thinking errors, mental. Usually the solutions has to be individualized. So we often think that maybe if this child will go through the rehabilitation process, everything will change and become good again. But in some cases, we haven't had our homework done, and we haven't excluded the obstacles for the recovery. And then it seems that it looks like there's a wrong methodology or the incompetent specialist, but in fact, from the very beginning, we could see that we cannot expect a positive outcome because of these obstacles. And one of it is that the child still lives in a violent environment. It's not necessarily the sexual environment, but as a colleague mentioned, that different types of violence are often close together. So the child has to keep on communication with the perpetrator, particularly in a situation with for the teenagers, and but they are injured. So the victims have very ambivalent feelings about this episode and about the person who was the perpetrator, and the child doesn't feel such a victim at all. And if we cannot stop the communication, then it's very hard for us to stop the communication. If it's a very active criminal proceedings, there is an expertise, interrogation, etc., etc. Even that is not the best time for us to start the therapeutic approach, because the situation has to stabilize. What we often ignore is there's one other or more reasons that the family is not ready for this rehabilitation. So any psychological aid will give more benefits if we have a motivation in the family to receive this psychological aid. For instance, when there are serious social issues or psychological issues like addictions or psychological or psychiatric diseases in the family, or the family structure is disorganized. And here we need more assistance from other experts. And yet another group we often ignore because we are quite helpless. Those are the famous cases where the partners, the spouses, believe that they shouldn't be together, but they cannot go in to the divorce. They continue to prove each other how this other party is a bad one. And the violence is very common and efficient weapon in this battle of ex-spouses. So, where one of the spouses write a report to the institutions about the violence, so the institutions have to act, and we cannot do much around these cases. And the child is somewhere in the middle, so we try to provide the child the support, but the parents continue this battle via institutions. So until this conflict will not be resolved, either they will renew their common life, or they decide that they will divorce and split apart. And until they do their own reconciliation, rehabilitation is impossible. There will be no changes in the child's state. We will only observe how the child's difficulties are only increasing. So it's very likely that this child will grow up. He has a personality disorders present.
Jā, labi. Un tad jau arī tas, kas šodien izskanēja, kad
today we already heard it, but these interventions we have in place. We just heard about the medical interventions. We spoke about legal interventions. And there in the middle is a child with a parent. And if we consider a child, the child at first has to have a safe environment where we are stopping this violence. And that's a crisis intervention we were mentioning earlier. And we reach some kind of stability. So step by step, we get to the point where there is a long-term psychological aid, and we diminish all the multiple consequences. Of course, one of the main consequences is PTSD, but not everybody is developing PTSD. So if we think about the efficacy of different therapeutic methods, it's measured in comparison with initial struggle of the child. For instance, if the child has a depression symptoms, there will be one therapeutic approach. If there will be PTSD, then there will be other approach. If it will be changes in the behavior, it will be yet another methodology. And it's great that we have experts who know or are capable of wide spectrum of different methods. So we don't just reach out for the hammer, and all the issues look like nails. So we really need a wide toolbox so we can provide the aid where it's necessary for the child. And as Ilse mentioned, that we still are forgetting a little about the family, about the parents, and that's for sure. Thinking about the state-financed psychological aid, we should think more how we can include the support that is meant for the parents. And sometimes, particularly when we think about very little children, about preschool children, the smaller the child, more his therapists are the parents. And if we will not strengthen and support the parent, the child will hardly see positive changes, or they will be very minimal. And therefore, we really need to think how we can
vecākus gan viņu psihoizglītot,
educate the parents from psychological standpoint, but also to accept that there is a huge sense of guilt, that I didn't sow it on the right time, that I didn't provide security to my child, how to communicate with society. All these sensations are not only for the victim, but but also the shame about the family as a wrong family, because these things happen. And it's a whole special block to provide this psychological aid, but to resolving the case in general. We are creating the contact with a non-violent parent. It's really necessary. Otherwise, if we are not very careful with that, this non-violent parent goes on the side of the violent parent. And it happens when the non-violent parent feels that he's been blamed, that he hasn't been good enough. So he unites with the violent parent. They make a union against us. But we do know that there is no better place for a child to grow than his biological family. Therefore, it's very important that we unite with this non-violent parent. We give this parent an acceptance. We show them support and give them all that is necessary so that the non-violent parent can stay on the child's side, but not of the violent parent's side. Now I'm moving towards the end. You see, that was my intention to speak so much.
Kur mēs esam šobrīd ar to psiholoģisko?
Where we are now with the psychological aid. I believe that last year with support of the welfare ministry and together with the Bērna, we have started to create this network of psychologists supporting and providing in-depth training for the specialists who are particularly developed their skills and capabilities to work with children suffered from the sexual abuse and violence. We believe we will develop this network further, and the welfare ministry has ideas of how to acquire the financing for these ideas and how to support it, and how these specialists get sufficient support. Because it is important that every child, wherever he or she lives, gets support from these specialists. And we need to retain these experts of the field, because it's a psychologically difficult area to work in. So we have to provide them both professional support. We talk about supervisions and trainings, but also different kind of consultations. We need legal assistance, social understanding of social systems. So we need to be assured that this specialist receives all the different consultations. So those specialists support and develop this network not just on the initial stage, but in ongoing period of time. Also, we need to consider the salaries, the payments for these services provided. But now seems that we can resolve it. And here are the needs of our clients, and we can talk about three main issues. First is a wide spectrum of methods respective to the actual situation of the client. So we don't have just the hammer. There is a support for the parents, and we have this idea of the whole family, like brothers, sisters, and how the relationships are around this intra-family sexual abuse. And what is very important in our modern society, it's a value that I'm not taking what is given to me, but I'm selecting, I'm choosing from what is offered to me. And when we consider it from the violence point of view, one of the violence shows up when you are undergoing the activities which are done to you without asking your desire. So this opportunity to make your own choice is part of the treatment in here, and that refers to everything, also to rehabilitation. So it's not like, okay, here is, you have the case, here's your rehabilitation, you have to go to it, but I can choose what is necessary for me. And thank you for your attention.
Paldies, Laurai. Vai ir jautājumi runātājiem? Jā, lūdzu. Jā, mikrofonā laikam vajag, lai var ārzemju viesi saprast.
And so please talk into the microphone so that our guests can also understand. My name is Solvita Anna. I work in an orphanage. For a long time already, I have experience also with families, with children in day centers, and as a social worker. And I have listened to the specialist speaking today. I am really glad for us having finally such opportunity also in Latvia. But it made me think such one aspect. Upon working in my everyday life with children who had suffered from violence, considering the fact that this violence is very widespread already from primitive society and structures, and of course I don't think we can actually get rid of it completely and absolutely. We have abuse and violence among children, within families, and also third persons and third parties against the children. As a social worker, upon working with children, for me, it is very urgent and worrying how I can impact the fact that what I see is that these acts of violence and events and occurrences do not reduce in their quantity, and we all know how it affects the psyche of children, how many psychiatric problems occur due to that, and how it impacts their integration in the society and their well-being and health, and what are the consequences for their further future life. And so maybe also similarly colleagues in Latvia, but especially colleagues from abroad who have longer experience with these matters, maybe there is something we can do to have as little as possible such children receiving the service. And otherwise it feels like we are fighting and trying to find the solutions for the consequences, but maybe we should focus and concentrate all our economical and political effort to reach this very deep level of why, where it originates, and maybe to mitigate this source.
Jā, es domāju, ka jūs ļoti pareizi teicāt, ka šis ir
I
kaut
think
kas,
you are right.
visdrīzāk nebeigsies
In
nekad.
terms of this
Ja
is
mūsu
probably
mērķis ir
never
nonākt
going to
tur,
end,
kad,
ever.
pasaulē vairs nav
And so if we do
vardarbība,
want
tad
to,
vislabāk iet mājās tuliņ, jo šis mērķis nav
well,
sasniedzams.
let us just go home and
vienlaikus
think about
tas,
nothing
kas
if we
ir,
want to
un mēs
reach achieve such society where there is no violence.
pēc iespējas
However,
mēs,
there is always something we can do to reduce it as much as possible, reduce the possibilities as much as possible for violence to occur. Meaning, and so if we look back at where we were in the 90s when we only began talking about it, and now, I don't know, in 2024 and 2023, so many things have been achieved, and it's not actually entirely true that the violence has not reduced. No, it changes, and the statistics itself, it's the numbers, and the most important is to interpret the numbers, and the fact that previously people didn't speak about it, people didn't report. It's clear that we see the numbers and it seems like it's more, but actually it's not more cases, it's more reported cases. We are more aware of it now, and we know what is normal and what is not normal. So it has changed, because maybe previously we thought, or people thought like, oh, this is normal, nothing special, but now we are more sensitive, aware, and that is why it seems that there's more. But I don't think that there is actually more. Our borders change, our understanding changes, and that is the never-ending process. I think it's time for us to go for a lunch. Thank you. And I want to also announce that currently that's all with the conference online. Thank you to all who listened. Let us applaud to all the speakers and experts. And this is the end of our broadcast of this event. Thank you to all, and thank you to everyone.